thought it was the Aurora Borealis,
Oh,
but it's not.
All right, well, we're off and running. The band is back together here, and today we're going to talk about all these ritual things that seem to go along with spirituality. And I remember, as I was growing into spirituality, okay, I had to carry this crystal around. I had to chant these A's, E's, and Ohms. And then somebody said I got to meditate. God, it was going to be a lot of work over here. And so today we'll talk about some of these traditions and really what some of the purpose and meaning is in our own experience interpretations of it. So without further ado, Tom, we were talking, if you don't mind, we'll just start with you
Okay.
and just share some thoughts and we'll all just chime in.
Well, I majored in music years ago, and so I have a musical background. I've always been interested in music. And I mentioned in an earlier version of one of our talks about my experience of holding the guitar on me when I was bedridden and the effect of that. So I have a visceral experience of the effect of vibration, but also the strings. And so I know and that was before I started getting into all of the spiritual stuff, but just an experience of having vibration on me, and the effect of that. As I got older and as I began to get into spiritual matters and sound and so forth, I studied or, experienced a variety of teachers and or other musicians who worked with sound when I was in Boston specifically, or especially because in Boston is kind of a gathering place of information. And what started to emerge from that, and I will mention, we talked about being in Italy. In my early years as a musician, I traveled for 6 different summers with an orchestra, and we played in all over Tuscany. And those concerts were held in cathedrals for the most part. And you mentioned St. Francis of Assisi, and Assisi is one of the places we played. And we played in front of the set of the movie of Brothers, Sun, Sister Moon, was it? They had just filmed that the summer, the time before we got there, and the set was still up. And we had a concert in front of that set, so it was really interesting. And then, of course, we walked around and toured that area. But in playing in those huge cathedrals, the sound would just go forever and ever. And it was such an amazing experience to be surrounded, not just having the sound come from someplace in front of you, but reverberating in the whole space. And then you were, in a sense, inside of the sound. It was all around you. And so that was very amazing. And then the experience, Mike and I talked a little bit before we started about Italy and the interest in the monks that were there. And then that kind of dovetailed into talking about the sound of the chanting that they would do inside of these cathedrals. And the intention of those Gregorian chants, well, I mean, I'm sure it's more profound than even what is talked about, but it's to put you into a state of like a trance, and to draw you into higher realms. And sound is a very important part of that, because sound is a language, and that language is I've heard it said that angels particularly like music, and that music they'll dance, they'll just get really excited when there's music and involved in that. The music of the spheres is a term that's often referred to, with the vibration of the planets, and the vibration of everything has a vibration. And so when you actually get to the more subtle parts of that vibration, like through stones and through objects, I could hit the table and that will create a vibration. Some of those vibrations are more subtle that we don't necessarily pay attention to. The more that you meditate or the more that you spend time in nature, you start paying attention to the natural sounds, birds and the sound of the wind, the sound of water. All of these things have archetypical um, images for us. They engender images of nature and so forth. But there's actually literally, as we humans like to play. Richard, you talked about playing. We got attached to playing with all of these things that came in, early. Like I think it was last week or the week before when we talked about people getting attached to all of this fantastic stuff that Earth provides.
Yeah.
You know, um, playing with those things, and musicians, it's not an accident that we call that playing music. That we're really playing with sound. We're moving with sound. We're taking sound and doing something with it, and we organize it, and we come up with all these different things. In classical music, the classical composers used sound very specifically. It was organized, and when they composed pieces, they weren't just thinking, oh, that sounds pretty. There was mathematical formations or formulations in the way that those things were laid out, so that there's literally you're taking a certain organized group of sounds and rhythms and putting them in a sequence that has an effect, and that effect is felt whether you know it or not. And so Beethoven and all of these other musicians, um, it's been said that some of those musicians were masters. Well, masters in more than the sense of being like you get a master's degree in something, um, but they really worked very intently with sound for specific purposes of raising the spirit and of taking you on a journey, spiritual journey through those sounds. So when you're listening to classical music, if you learn to listen to it um, more than just, oh, isn't that pretty, and really sit with it, it will take you someplace. And so I would recommend it if you have an opportunity to sit down with some of these classical pieces that early um, pieces that you could put on and actually sit with it and see what effect it has on you, just for your own experiment. In working with, let's say, vibration, the chanting, and Jeff will probably and Rachel will both be able to speak to this as well with the kirtans that we do. That those kirtans and those chants and those mantras and those particular sounds are designed to have an effect. And it's not just again just sitting into oh dee da ba bam ba bam doo, I mean that has an effect for somebody to free them up, but they're quite literally ancient sounds and ancient mantras and ancient things that are specifically to create a spiritual environment. Um, in being in these spaces in Italy with the reverberation again, before I really was aware of the spiritual dimension of that, um, I think that was for me a part of the awakening experience to be in places like that will have an effect on you whether you know it or not, or whether you know what the effect is. And so I recommend people to explore that, to go to I mean, one of the best places to go chant is a bathroom that's heavily tiled, a large bathroom. There was one particular bathroom in, I think it was in North Carolina. It's one of the Baptist retreats, and I grew up in a Baptist background. And it was this place that had this large, in the men's bathroom, it was heavily tiled. And I was playing flute at that point. I had my Lakota flute. And I played, just went off in there, just like Jeff and I went into that. Was it Abu Simbel? Yeah, your microphone is off, Jeff. I don't know if that's probably okay.
Yeah, it was Abu Simbel.
Abu Simbel, where the reverberation of that was going. It was just everywhere. I actually took my flute into the Taj Mahal
Wow.
in India, and I was allowed, for whatever reason. I mean, I talked to one of the guys who's the guard there, and he said, "Well, there's this place down in that people don't go into." And was talking about sound and all of that, and playing the flute, because I was playing in a very large bathroom. It wasn't a bathroom, but it was heavily tiled. And I was able to play in there, and there weren't very many people there that day. And he said, once you go down into that chamber down there, you'll really like that. So I went down in there, and it was just amazing, because you don't need a reverberation, a microphone and all of that, so that these sounds would just linger. And so the Gregorian chants, when they're being sung in these cathedrals, it does the same thing. It lingers, but it puts you into an altered state, for lack of a better word for it, but a state of heightened spiritual awareness. I feel like that music and sound is very much a part of the spiritual experience. I don't know. I can't remember what Tom talked about. He may have mentioned something about sound in his near-death experience. Richard, did he mention anything about that?
The main thing I'm remembering at the moment is that he did not hear sounds or see things. He bypassed all imagery and went
Mhm.
straight to the source.
Mhm.
So I don't have anything to help out with that.
But he did talk about his experience with some musicians
Yeah.
that he interacted with, or had an affinity for a violinist, or
Yeah.
a chorus. I think it was maybe too, with a choir or something like that. That he must have had some connection with
Vivaldi was his absolute favorite
Vivaldi.
composer. Yeah. When he first, uh, after laying on the couch healing for a few days, he asked Elaine to turn the radio on, and she had turned it to a classical station when he wasn't there one day and forgot to turn it back to soft rock. So she flipped it on, got a few steps away, understood that, oh no, this is that elevator music that he hates. She spins around to stop it, and he holds his hand up and says, no, wait, don't you know who that is? And he understood it to be Vivaldi, and that it was Vivaldi's signature,
Mm.
the Four Seasons, or a particular part of the Four Seasons. And it was written much, as you say, very specifically to evoke uh, a movement within the person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Vivaldi had been called in before whoever the big cheese of the town was, and the guy's got his head down and he's writing. Vivaldi comes before his desk and he says, "You will write a sung mass for Wednesday or for Sunday," and just that was it meant to the guards. Take him to a room and don't let him out until he gets it done. Literally burning the candle on both ends to write this entire sung mass by Sunday. That happened on what came to be known as Wednesday. So in a matter of a few days, he wrote this thing along the lines of simply putting down a note and saying, "Okay, God, what's next? Okay, God, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
Okay," and that's a way
Right.
of describing how
Right.
it
Right.
came
Right.
to him.
Yeah. Many musicians and composer will talk about having, it came through them. A song came through.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's often the case, that this music is from whatever realm is there, the music of the spheres, and that you're really just attuning yourself to that and allowing it to come through the filter of your mind and then back out again in some kind of interpretation of what it is that you're able to do with the instrumentation you have or your vocal cords, you know, and that we are musical instruments. The early cultures used to play their bodies. You know, these were rhythm instruments, and they would play their chests, and they would play the, you know, this was the earliest instruments was where really the human body, you know, before they had musical instruments per se, or they would hit stones together and rocks, and so rhythm and sound was a part of our a part of us for way back, you know.
I'm remembering a story of a modern day composer of more popular songs like someone along the lines of Tom Waits or Leonard Cohen or one of these well-known people, and a song came into his mind, a tune came into his mind while he was on the Los Angeles freeway, which is 6 lines of pure chaos. And he actually said out loud, "Can you not see that I'm driving? Go to someone else." And within a month, he heard that song, that exact song, from one of his compatriot
Yeah.
composers,
Wow.
without ever having told that guy.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, songs will have a way of doing that, or chants sometimes, and it'll drive you crazy. You won't be able to go to sleep until you get it out, you know.
yeah.
Um, and I know Jeff has been doing a lot of writing in the last several years, in more of a spiritual vein, and he, with some of the kirtan things that we've been doing. I have written a few pieces, but it's hard for me to. I can improvise pretty well,
Real
and
well.
I enjoy doing that. The structure of writing out. I mean, when I majored in music, the hardest class for me was the theory class. And that's because there were all these formulas and all of these different names for what how you're supposed to organize chords, how you're supposed to create a piece of music and all of that. It was like I just had a really hard time with that because my mind was not wanting to constrict itself to that way of doing music. They said, okay, let's get together and have theory class and everybody come up with something. Yeah, I could come up with tunes and all that kind of stuff. But to write it out mathematically like that was very challenging for me, and I didn't enjoy that part. So I'm amazed at Vivaldi and Beethoven and all these guys who were able to do that mathematical part and had the mindset to do that and actually write it down and have it orchestrated with all the different instruments involved. um, that's just not something that I would excel at, but um, I value it. And but the experience of being in the cathedrals and being in those places and doing music, definitely, if you have an opportunity to go to a men's bathroom or a women's bathroom, I'm sure they're the same. I just haven't really spent a lot of time in there. Uh, you know, find yourself an acoustic spot like that and go and hum. Because there are when you hum, there's a set of what's called overtones, and you can actually shape your mouth in such a way that you can capture or isolate the overtones. A sound is made up of a series of sounds called overtones, and there's a sequence of the notes, ba, da, da, like that. And so if you move your mouth and shape your mouth a certain way, and I have to move my thing out of the way here. I'm not getting it very well there, but when you do that, you get these different pitches that come out of just a single sound. And by shifting the container, which is your mouth, you'll isolate those different overtones. So in a trumpet, for instance, when you're playing a bugle, you're actually playing the overtones because they don't have fingers on a bugle, just a straight bugle that you play like those are the overtones. You're blowing into that instrument and you're just playing those overtones. And those overtones relate to such things as the rainbow that you have behind you there. And in mystical music, you will hear talk about the sounds or the pitches that relate to the chakras. And the chakra system in the body has to do with these areas of energy and what they affect and what they have to do with. And so when you're singing certain pitches, they will stimulate certain parts of your body as well as your spiritual self. And colors relate to that as well. And so there's a relationship between color and sound. And all of these things are taking the light and sound because we know that there's a relationship between light and sound by the virtue of the fact that when you hear thunder and see lightning, that's this part of the same phenomenon. That the sound of that intensity that you will see on one hand and hear on the other hand, you know that there's a relationship between light and sound. They're the a vibration level of the same thing, or a frequency of the same thing. So the frequency of the ocean, the frequency of the stars, the frequency of the planets, the frequency of this table, everything has a frequency based on its density and based on its how hard it is, the shape of it. The cup will have a frequency. When you hit it, you can take all kinds of things and take a mallet and hit it, and you'll hear a different pitch. So that's how you come up with things like a xylophone or percussion instruments, where you have all these pieces of wood that are cut to different thicknesses and different lengths, and you hit each one and you'll get a different pitch, right? So that has to do with, we all have a frequency based on our density. So if your body will have a certain frequency, Jeff's body, Rachel's, Richard's, everybody's body has a slightly different frequency. And so when you play your body or you sing through your body, you're singing a frequency. And that frequency has meaning beyond the sound. The sound has meaning that you may not be able to attribute easily to what is the meaning of that sound, But on a mystical level, there is meaning to sound. And it isn't always something that you can define intellectually. So anyway, that's a starting point for some of our discussions. So some of those mysteries about sound and the meaning of sound, or the experience of sound and what it has. Like if you're driving, some sounds can be very irritating, and not because the sound itself is irritating, but because it's might trigger an emotion for you of a past experience, or of an irritation because somebody's mowing the lawn and I'm trying to meditate, So what do you do with that? So what I've learned to do is to take the sound as a part of my meditation, rather than resisting, and doing battle with the sound emotionally in myself. If I'm stuck with that sound, what am I going to do? One of the things that bothers me the most is to be into a room that has a fluorescent light. And I've talked about this with Jeff and Rachel. We'll be doing chanting sometime or playing music sometime in a space, because we have a group called Bhakti Kulani. Put a little plug in here for our group. And I play bass in this group. It's a new instrument for me. But if I tune the bass and there's a light frequency going on or a hum in the room that's out of pitch, it drives me crazy.
It
I mean,
does.
it's out of pitch, it's not, and it's like, how do you resolve that? How do you reconcile, if you're trying to sing a certain pitch, and that to me is a metaphor for having a vibration or an experience outside of what you're trying to do in your life, and something is contradictory to that. How do you resolve that?
Yeah.
And musically, it's very difficult. You either everybody tune to the frequency of that light, or the machine in the room. Let's all read it. Let's tune to that machine, and then it becomes a part of our drone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and that will affect people. I mean, it literally does affect whether you know it or not. If you're sitting there and you're hearing this incongruent sound, something is out of pitch with what you're trying to do, it can, to me, it really disturbs the energy of what you're trying to do. So I think it's important to try to turn off any of those kind of machines, or ice machine or whatever it is. Do we really need ice right now? Turn the machine, unplug the machine. We don't need ice right now. We're chanting. Or literally tune to the ice machine. They become part of your instrument,
Or the fluorescent lights actually do flash at 60 cycles per second.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So if you tune to that, all your songs come out the same.
Right. Right. And those things have an effect on us, whether we know it or not. It's like the low frequency sounds. And I know Tom talked about that at one point. He thought that was dangerous.
I have a big problem with, like, I'm in a neighborhood where people love to have their car radios booming.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is, honestly struggle with what that tends to bring out of me.
Well, it literally vibrates your body. I mean, those ultra low frequencies that they have in their cars, where the boom, and the whole everything's vibrating around you.
Yeah,
that's very dangerous to people. That
it brings out the worst of me.
Yeah.
It's sort of, if I'm stopped at a red light and someone's near there, it doesn't happen. I've gotten better, but when it first started happening, all I wanted to do was ram that car.
Well, it's vibrating your heart. It's vibrating
and
your body, literally vibrating your body in an unhealthy manner. And those ultra low frequencies are all over the place. We don't even know it.
It brought out the absolute worst of me. I've gotten better with it.
The one of the things that has popped into my mind is that and this is found in all the various sacred scriptures that I've ever read or had listened to people talk about, is first there was the word. First there was sound. And it was through sound that creation occurred. I've been, doing a lot of reading on in various, Sanskrit texts and whatnot. Not that I read Sanskrit, translations. And I've been reading this one where the first half of the book is all about Sanskrit and how the language was used, all the way down to the individual letters, the vowels and the consonants were used to create the universe.
Mm-hmm.
They were uttered.
Right.
And that sound created an aspect of the universe. And then there's this whole section of the book, which is like mind-blowing, was they took, or the divine essence, in this case, Lakshmi, took the various sounds, the various letters, and put them together to create various mantras, which when uttered became an aspect of creation. So in essence, everything we look at has a vibratory pattern embedded in Sanskrit. And it's fascinating. So that when we do these chants, we're chanting these sounds that have an incredibly dramatic effect on us, on everything that's around us, and on out there. And I think that that's true, especially when you put, like with Gregorian chants. The first time I heard Gregorian chants, I'm not even sure where that was. I was amazed. I was amazed at the power of it. I was amazed at the effect on me that had. And I was like, wow, what is this? You know, and I said, well, it's Gregorian chants. I'm like, Catholics. Oh, man, I'm not supposed to like Catholics. I grew up a Protestant, you know, and we weren't even supposed to look in the Catholic church that was next door to my Methodist church, you know. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is just incredible. And again, I think it's the same thing. It's taking these sounds and using these languages that are just so powerful that they can have incredible effects on our consciousness. And I've certainly explored Sanskrit mantras more than others because that's what I'm familiar with now. But the effect is dramatic. I cannot underestimate or overstate the impact that has had on my own personal evolution, and the evolution of what I've been doing. And I've always loved music. When I was a kid, I remember sitting there. My favorite part of the church services was listening to the choirs and looking at the stained glass windows. You know, that was my favorite part. And then I was enrolled. I didn't volunteer, but I was enrolled into the various choirs that kids could be in. And I enjoyed it. It was totally wonderful. I can't say that I saw light bulbs going off. But when I got into college and I started listening to music, as we all did at that point, I could feel the effect. Now, we were listening to rock and roll. We were listening to all that incredible music that was happening at the time. This incredible explosion of incredible. I was just watched a video of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I mean, it's amazing what they were doing. Just amazing how they put those harmonies together. It's amazing. No wonder it had such an impact. And if ever one doubts the power of music, just look around. It's incredible the effect it has on people. Whether it's in a church service, whether it's in a kirtan, whether it's people sitting in their cars listening to that incredible music that's vibrating their bodies, the effect is powerful, and it takes people places, and you listen to people. I was listening, like I said, we watched that Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young thing. Those songs are old, and I'm like, wow, I can tell you where I was. I can tell you what I was doing. I mean, there's songs I can tell you who I was with. It's incredibly powerful. And having since, I learned how to play a little bit in college, then it literally got put in the corner because of life, and listened to a bunch of different kinds of music because I was doing body work and doing yoga classes. But then my love asked me what I wanted to do more of when I turned 60. And I said, I want to learn how to play guitar. I want to get better at playing guitar, because I kind of picked it back up again. And I would sit there and watch basketball games, play all the chords I knew, which wasn't that many. And Clifford Dumais, God bless Clifford, was in our Sufi circle at the time. Oh, and that's another thing, the Sufi dances. I mean, the impact of that music was unbelievable. One of the first Sufi dances I ever went to was at one of the Geneseo conferences. And I had been ordained. I was in an altered state. And we went through this Sufi dance where I was looking into people's eyes for however long it took us, singing those songs about, just divine love. I mean, it was powerful. I can't underestimate the power of that. And but Clifford took me under his wing, and I learned a bunch of guitar, and I've just taken off with it since. And I love sitting there and composing stuff, because there's God knows how many chords you can make on a guitar, and you learn some and you put them together, and it's amazing, and part of it is that I'm doing it. Part of it is that it feels guided at a certain level. And I'm, holding an instrument, I can feel the instrument, and then I can sing the songs, I can put the chants to it. I've written some English lyrics to, go in there, and it's just amazing. And again, the impact that has had on how I proceed in my spiritual growth or expression has been dramatic. I can't, listening to Jayu Tal. The first time I went to a kirtan with Jayu Tal, I was just like, again, I've had several of these, but it was, I'm home. This is it. Just sitting there chanting and chanting and chanting, getting faster and faster, and then slower and slower and faster and faster. Da, 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 da. It was amazingly powerful. And I would agree with Tom, experience it wherever and as often as possible. And playing the flute in those temples in Egypt was profound. The music, we sat up at the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, and God bless them, they let us stay there all night long. And we played and played and played, and we chanted and we hit the bowls. We just were off. And they could hear that sound. They said it went down the passageway, out the pyramid, and surrounded the pyramid. Wow. So that the people that were just standing outside the pyramid could hear it, almost as well as if they were actually in the room.
Wow.
That's just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. It's heart-opening.
I want to build on that, Jeff, because one of my really first spiritual experiences with sound was in Egypt, and it was because of both Tom and you. And it was, I have a picture, and I can't be too much work to bring it up. I think I should before, but of where you were each playing. I think I had just what's the thing that you shake?
A baby rattle.
Yeah, rattle a snake or something.
Yeah, we brought that along just for you.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, I can figure that one out. But it was, in fact, and you were playing, and I really, for the first time, felt this incredible aspect of sound, and that was early on. And it's interesting because as I look, nature of my career as an educator, and the most important question that leads an educator, good educator, is question why. Because if we ask why, we understand why things are, and then we can teach it. And you've got to be able to break it down into its parts to be able to teach somebody else the essence of it logically, et cetera, so that they can understand and then do it. And so as I was getting exposed to these new principles in the spirituality, such as sound, and experiencing it like I just did, with you, I wanted to understand it. And it was fascinating because probably 99% of the time I found out that there was a science that really helped me grasp and understand these concepts and be able to understand it better. And so, for example, with sound, as I began to research sound and the impact of sound as an educator, one of the things I discovered is that when you want to learn a language, you can double, triple the speed at which you learn a new language by playing classical music when you're learning it. And one of you did, I think Richard or somebody had said it's 60 cycles or something, right? Is the basics of it. And so then I wanted, as the educator, well, why is that? What is that? And then I had come to understand that is that, and from what I recall, is we have the basic states of mind. There's the alpha state, our alert state,
Right.
right? Here we are active right now, and our mind's spinning, we're revved up, very alert. And then there's the beta state, of which is a relaxed state. And that's the characteristic of beta is that we operate, lo and behold, at this 60 cycles or whatever whatever the word is, or frequency or whatever the word is, but we operate at that, which is why classical music was so effective in this learning a new language, is it helped to get us to this beta state. And then the theta state, which is this near REM sleep, this deep meditative state, operates also at a different frequency, which is why it helps when we hear these sounds, these vibrations, because it helps us get to that state. So in my own way as an educator, I begin to learn, what was known behind this that really impressed the heck out of me, to be able to then say that, we hear the terms, and, Tommy would say, oh, these vibrations. And I remember being in these circles, and I'd say, I don't get it. I get it. It sounds like a different language. I want to really be able to better understand it. And so I bring it back to this research part and begin to understand it, even at a more scientific level very often, to see it. And the same thing like with light and colors, a lot of already science and research documenting the impact that it has. And then there were things like the chakras. All right, chakras. All right, so initially sort of a hard concept to grasp, but remember spiritually is okay, 7 of them, is okay. Sounds like somebody came up with some idea to make some money off that one. But, initially that was at Doubting Thomas, right? But then I had to know. And then lo and behold, I began to understand is that there is these various chakras. And if you look at the meanings of the chakras, and again, I'm no expert on that, but enough to get myself in trouble, the lower chakras, tend to be where we operate at when we're not as spiritual, right? We're very much deep into earth, the lower chakra, the sexual chakra, right? The things. And then yet look tied to that were these frequencies. And Richard, when you talked about these bass sounds of it, were characteristic of that energy center, and so what it was doing for me is bringing me back to this basic thing that got me in touch for me and my personality with this deep held anger I had as a result of my past. And so those deep things would only sort of regurgitate that chakra and that anger and stuff that I had. But that was the evolution I was pursuing to really understand these concepts. So not only are they very important spiritually, but they're being documented today, within science and other ways to help people really understand the importance of it. So when I'm trying to get to a meditative state, I now realize the importance for me of having somebody who has a very active mind in that alpha state time is so I now bring in the sound, the music, the light, the candle experience to begin to start bringing my energy level down to a state which is now more conducive with meditation and allows me then to have this greater connection now as a result of this meditation state. So you notice, so my view is I had to sort of break it down into pieces that I could understand, which sort of now is a benefit I found from, me being my personality, my style is it helped me to grasp concepts, to be able to better teach or share, but mostly to understand and apply them rather than just writing them off as some meaningless new age bullshit or something that I was hearing into something that, yes, I would experience. So again, I'll finish where I started is thanks to the music. And today to this part, Jeff, you talked about remembering this date, remember this experience. Well, when I go into these states, it so often brings me back to Egypt. And in particular, that temple where we were, where you were playing the flute, right? And I think I bought one of those flutes. I still have it from you, the little wood Indian flute or whatever you call those things. And just how you made that thing sing. And in making that sing, for the first time, I was like in this other dimension. And so thanks. And then Tom, when he would come to the conferences, and you did one on light and sound at one point,
Mhm.
and I did like really get to these incredible effects. And they said, my God, you can do this without drugs. This is incredible.
Yeah.
You know? And so I attribute, so much of that experience early on, and I remember those things like they were yesterday. So thank you for doing it. And it's only my part here to say is, there's really rational meaning to these conversations we're having today, that once you do understand it, it can help you bring to a greater level of understanding of why they really do have this great effect that we hear us all talking about.
I think, part of it is that it boils down to experience. I mean, I can tell people all kinds of stuff, and I've been, and I continue to listen to Dharma talks and all this, and they're clear. They can spout all kinds of stuff. I mean, I could spout all kinds of stuff. And on some intellectual level, it might make sense. It may not. But it's the experience. It's here is what you can do to have that experience. Once you have the experience, it can never be taken away. Once I started having those kinds of mystical experiences, they can never be taken away. I can try to forget them, but they're there. It can never be doubted again. And once that really starts to grow, then, it takes on this life of, this is real, and this is transformative on very basic levels, and I wanted to go back to one of the things that you had said, was that all of our chakras and all of the energetics that are represented in them are all spiritually wonderful. We need all of them. If we didn't have them, we couldn't function in this incredible creation that we live in. So the idea, especially when it comes to what we're talking about here, sound and chanting, is that I was going to use the word purify, but I'm not sure if I want to use that word, because that denotes something's dirty, but we align them more with what their spiritual intention really is.
Well, it's like tuning an instrument. If your
yes.
guitar is out of tune,
Yeah.
you're not going to get the effect
You
of
have
that beautiful music that you would say Crosby, Stills, and Nash. If they were all out of tune, it's like you'd be sitting there going, "Let me out of here,"
Tom has told me many times about the tune.
It's very important, and it's the same thing as tuning your body. To tune anything like mechanical, if you've got an adjustment that's not right, that thing is not going to work the way you intend it. So the intention that you're talking about, there is, and I will say, I was going to say this a moment ago, that you don't have to be a musician, polished musician, to experience what Jeff is talking about, and what I've experienced, and different ones of us. You can find something that's pre-tuned. They make these nice little metal pots kind of things that have little slots around them that you just hit with mallets, and any of those notes are fine. It's like a pentatonic scale. There's like 5 notes that any of those 5 notes you hit, it's going to sound fine. It's not like the diatonic scale where you have a missed note every now and then, or it doesn't work right. So there are ways you can do that. I'm sorry.
In perfect cue.
Thinking of sound here. That's my phone. I'd like to have. I don't want my phone to go. You know, I can enjoy listening to it even if I don't answer it. You know.
That was about a 3.5 chakra to
me. But anybody can play music, you know, they can sing. You've got your musical instrument right here, as I said. You can, even if you think, most people think, a lot of people who think they're tone deaf, you know, and they will not sing because somebody told them they didn't sound good. So they quit. They never experienced humming or chanting. Just make sounds, you know. Get in one of those nice reverberatory places and go, whoa. Don't worry about the sound that you know, the pitch you're making. It doesn't have to be, you know, a particular song. Just experience the sound of that. Go into a place where your voice, you know, that's why people talk about singing in the shower. And that's the same thing. They sing in the shower because there's nobody around, but also because there's some reverberation that they experience there. And you can actually, if you go into a room, you can find the pitch of that room. You just go and go through the frequencies up, and you'll hear something in the room vibrate. It'll start to shake or vibrate. You can find the pitch of that thing is you're resonating the frequency of that whatever piece of furniture or light fixture or whatever it is in the room. So anyway, you don't have to be musician. I have this thing that I've said often, that how many sermons do you remember? Well, how many songs or hymns do you remember? And so the people will go off, you know, oh, I know the Amazing Grace, and I know this one, and I know that one. And I think that hymns in church really is what stays with people. That's the part people really get into, you know. And of course, in modern day now, it's all praise music, which is a form of chanting. That's, you know,
Absolutely.
you know, it's just they're starting to realize that people are attracted to this. So let's adopt some of that, you know, and make praise music, and so bring some people into the fold.
Well, and it, you know, and it has an effect. And I think that, you know, it's interesting to hear about, you know, the scientific underpinnings, you know, of vibration, because it's cool to go, okay, there is a scientific explanation. Because I was just I've always been one of those people that never really required that. I was just, because I would experience something and go, okay, all right, wow, cool. But it's nice to know that there is a scientific explanation. And it makes me wonder. I mean, like places where, you know, places that are considered holy places, you know, what's happening there? You know, is that, what's happening there? Is it vibrating at a certain frequency that makes meditation or accessing the oneness easier? It makes me curious. It makes me curious to wonder if there's any research on that sort of thing, you know, like at the vortexes or at some, you know, at the confluence of a river or what have you. You know, I really, you know, with the dances of universal peace and with kirtan and chanting, you know, I found them to be really, really powerful, because of the states that they induce, which are varied, you know, but you know, often after, you know, having a dance or sharing a kirtan, you know, there's you know, beautiful feelings of elation and love and joy. But I also want to talk a little, just affirm a little bit about what Jeff said with like mantra, you know, that one of the things that I really like about mantra is it provides a tool for exploring a certain aspect of yourself or the world, or it provides a tool for exploring a certain area. And when taken in like, and I have, when a traditional chant practice is 40 days, and and doing those kinds of practices where you're doing you're chanting, okay, I'm going to chant this for 108 times every day for 40 days. It provides a container for the exploration, and it allows, and it gives you you have a regular structured practice, but it gives you also the opportunity to observe all of the impacts, and they are concrete and physical, as well as subtle. And 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 that's, and it's like having that experience over and over again, of gaining insight, of creating practical change, of having just having things revealed to you, or getting guidance by engaging in that practice. So I just want to share that I feel like I agree, it's very effective, and it has that, it has impacts on lots of different levels. And and I do think that there's something to be said for the fact that, okay, I want to work on this certain aspect of myself, and I'm going to chant this mantra. I acknowledge that there is something about the fact that you are going on an intentional journey. You're creating an intention. You're saying, I am working on this thing, even if it's simply I'm exploring this thing. But it could be even more than that. It could be I am creating this thing. I'm creating this, and going on that journey. Has real effects. So yes, the intention, but also the vibration, and the understanding. So I just want to say amen. I agree. They're powerful. They're powerful tools. The mantras, but also just even the divine names. And even, like last night we had a dance, and we were offering blessings to people. We were, and that, I guess, is just an example of, we weren't using any specific name, but we were focusing with intention, and that was extremely powerful, to do that. And I found even more powerful, not just singing the song, but then directing it to someone, even if that other person wasn't, normally at a dance we would have a partner, and we would both be focusing on offering this blessing to one another. But in a virtual setting, that's just not really feasible to do. But even just saying, look at the screen and choose a person to offer those blessings to, I found to be enormously powerful, because I was focusing my intention to that person. So that I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, I would also say that you can also create what you might call negative vibrations or disharmonious vibrations. Whenever an argument occurs, or whenever you have said something slanderous to somebody, about somebody, or you've carried with you a really heavy, burdensome feeling or experience, those experiences are also vibration.
Yeah.
So the intention is important. Sometimes, like with the electric, with the incongruent sound or being out of tune, let's just say. Um, so if you can somehow bring harmony or attunement to a situation where there's, quote unquote, a bad experience or a negative experience or an uncomfortable experience, um, where a group of people are angry about something, that's where you can also, bring in a sense of resolution, or which music is a lot about resolution. It's
You're
about
right.
taking a progression of sounds and resolving them back to home. Like this, the major scale, da 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 da. Where do you want to go there? That wants to go back home, which is the first note of the scale. Da da. It's called an octave, and that's 8. And 8 is infinity. So there are all these little symbols that are associated with sound, but if you leave it at 7, 7 is a leading tone. And the reason it's used is because it leads you to want to go home. So the 7 is a spiritual number that has to do with movement towards 8. Da 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 da. And there you are. You feel, oh, thank you for resolving that note. Thank you for taking me home. So there are all these little symbologies about not just the symbol, but the actual sound itself has has an has a relationship between experience of what is the relationship between this pitch to that pitch to that pitch. So if you go into a disharmonious situation, you're probably looking at something that's unresolved. Da 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 da. Everybody's sitting around going, ah, da, 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 and oh my God, please resolve this. So you can come in with a resolution, uh, and that might be an action, it might be a thought form, it might be a chemistry. But
I'm getting quite a ring here. I'm hearing it's ringing much louder than I'm hearing your voice, Tom.
well, I'm not. The phone's
I
not
don't know how to
ringing.
resolve it either.
Yeah. There you go. Case in point, you see. Yeah, I hear that too, but it's not anything that I'm doing, and it's not in. And I don't know where it's coming from because I only hear it slightly. I'll take this off, and is that helpful?
No, it's still there.
No.
You're still hearing it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You are very
Still,
faint and
still
the ring
hearing
is quite
whoever.
loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel. But anyways, we're at the end of the time, and it's sort of a good way of having Tom fade out like that for us to conclude.
I want
So, yeah.
I wanted to add one thing. And where, just like Tom was doing, where does it resolve to? The heart. All of that coming home resolves to the heart, not the head, the heart. That's the power of music.
Well said. And on that note, what's that note? No.
Pick one.
Yes. No, sir, we finished. Resolved. Oh,
Right,
God.
right.
Yes. Yes. Well, this was fantastic. As always, I inspiring, motivational. I really learned a lot. And to me, one of the essences of it is I know from spiritual, I always heard is it's about raising our vibration. And I think all of these things that we just talked about have that effect, because when we're at that low place, that lower energy form, it is about raising our energy, and all of these things can help us to get there. So to be continued in our next session, God knows what that'll be. We'll figure that out when we get there. So on behalf of the band, thanks everybody. And until next time, do, re, mi, fa. Yes.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.